Hello there, this is Yinka Ojo here again with Guy Talk. I believe that Christ likeness and manliness are synonymous. If you want to really be a good man, a real man, then follow the principles of Christ. How are you doing? I just want to first of all say thank you to all my new subscribers. I want to say thank you for joining, thank you for coming, and I want you to just keep on coming. I'm going to be giving you videos that will help you, especially if you're a guy, if you're a man, to be strong, to be a wholesome man in every way. So thank you for subscribing. Let's take this to 100 subscribers in this very month of March by the grace of God. So please share this video, like this video, comment on this video, and ring the subscription bell so that you can be notified, the notification bell, so that you can be notified. Now listen, I want to talk about secure your future. Secure your future. We live in a time in which life is topsy-turvy. Everything is shaking. All that can be shaken will be shaking. That is what God's word even says. So we're looking at nations. Even stable nations are being shaken right now. Economies are being shaken. All over the world, there's a pandemic. The health situation is being shaken. And everywhere, there's so much uncertainty. But I want you to know that there is a way you can live in which you have a future that is secure. And I picked my story from Genesis chapter 25. If you read Genesis 25 from verses 21 to 30, it talks about the story of how two boys were conceived and were born, and how they grew, and how they turned out in two different divergent destinies and ends. I'm talking about the story of Jacob and Esau. The mother conceived them. You see that in Genesis 25, verses 21 to 30. The mother conceived them after a while, after she had not been able to get pregnant for a while, but she got pregnant, and it was a very problematic pregnancy, to say the least. The babies were fighting and struggling within her. Now, the first thing that you learn from that is that life starts at conception. Life does not start at birth, when they give the child a birth certificate. That's why children that are in the womb should be respected, and their lives should not just be terminated because the mother feels it's an inconvenient situation. I mean, no. So from the womb, they were showing their personality, their temperament. They were already showing that they were individuals. They were displaying their individualism. And so she went and sought God, and God told us something very crucial and important that we must understand, very relevant for today. God said there are two nations within your womb, and there are two peoples within you. And the Bible talks about the fact that the older will end up serving the younger. Now, by the time you look at this, and you look at the whole world, there are actually two types of nations in the world. By the time you look at the human race, over 7 billion human beings, there are only two types of human beings on the face of the earth. There are Jacob nations, there are Esau nations. There are Jacob human beings, and there are Esau human beings. And guess what? God said later on in the book of Romans, God said that Jacob have I loved, Esau have I hated. What is God saying? God is saying, I love the way Jacob, the principles and the lifestyle he has embraced, and the way he behaves. I love it. I want it for my people. But the Esau way of behavior, I don't want it for my people. Now, how do you secure your future? The way to secure your future is by being a Jacob person. So, two ways of thinking. When God said two nations and two peoples, what God is saying is that there are two ways of thinking. There are two ways of living. There are two ways of approaching life, and two perspectives that human beings take. The Jacob perspective or the Esau perspective. I wonder if you think about your life, what we've been taking all along. When you embrace the Jacob perspective, your future is secure. When you embrace the Esau perspective, then all the shakings of the world, they will shake away all the things that you think that you're building. So you want to look at areas where you have failed in life, and review what principles, what perspectives, what approaches to life you applied to it. and you want to correct things. Two people can be raised under the same roof, like Esau and Jacob. They even spent 9 months in the same womb, and then one ends up being successful and the other not successful. Why? Because of the values that they develop. The values that they develop. Also because of the way they see and they respond to life. There's a way that Jacob people respond to life, and there's another way that Esau people respond to life. There are certain values that Jacob people have embraced, and there are certain values that Esau people have embraced. So your outcome in life ultimately is not as a result of faith, F-A-T-E, or because of the kind of head you brought into the world. There's a statement in this part of the world. It just says that, well, it depends on on predestination. That is, some people are predestined to be failures, others are predestined to be successes. That is not it. It's as a result of choices that we make. Even God had to say that, look, I've set before you this day blessings and cursing, good and evil. Choose. He said, choose life. I've put before you death and life. God now says, but I encourage you to choose life. Your choices ultimately determine your destination and your outcome in life. There are Esau choices. There are Jacob choices. There are choices that lead to failure. There are choices that lead to success. You got to understand that. So your future is not difficult to predict, really. You don't need to say, I'm going to look for the stars. I'm going to look for horoscopes. I'm going to look for so and so to tell me what my future foretells. Your future ultimately is as a result of the series of choices you make. If there are Esau choices, the future turns out as failure. If they are Jacob choices, the future turns out as successful. And so I want you to think about that a little bit. So now, let's look at this now. Look at nations of the world. 210 nations and sovereign territories in the world. There are Esau nations and there are Jacob nations. When you look at developed countries that are run well and there's value for life and they want everybody to have a dream and they try and aspire towards that, freedom of speech, fundamental human rights are upheld. They are not led by dictators. There is real, genuine democracy. One man, one vote is pursued. Those are Jacob nations. But then there are some other nations in which the person heading them has been there for 30 years, 35 years, will not allow proper democracy, the will of man to be expressed. They're despots leading. They don't allow free economy. There are only a few people who are sitting down on the economy and running the nation and pocketing the money, and there's no transparency. Those are Esau nations. And guess what? Jacob nations will always rule over Esau nations. That is just the truth of the matter. And many people don't want to face this, but that's the reason why there are the nations that are, we call them the G7 and all of that. They are the top nations. And then you have a lot of other nations. They form themselves also as the one that are the ones below. They have their own organization also. But you see, God already said it. There are two types of nations. There are two types of human beings and individuals. Let me go a little bit further here. This will help you about the nature of Esau and the nature of Jacob. And think about your life as a guy or as a person. Jacob was a different man from Esau. Esau was a field man. Esau was an hunter. He will locate prey. He will pursue and run after the prey. He will kill it. He will gather it, and then he goes for one animal at a time. He uses a lot of stress and strength and physical muscle to try and get food, and he can only catch one animal at a time. But you see, Esau, that's how Esau was. Esau depended so much on going out every day for new prey. He will run on the premise that when I get to the bush, the animals will still be there. It's an uncertain future. And there are some days he will find out that he couldn't outrun the animal to catch the animal. His trap did not spring, or the animals were not just there. They had reduced in their population. So it was an uncertain future that this hunter man called Esau lived by. There was no food security, there was no assurance, there was no guarantee of the future. So, but Jacob was a man who decided to master the art and science of nurture. The same meat that Esau would go out spending energy and strength to try and catch, Jacob decided to rear it domestically. He became a cultivator. Jacob was a cultivator. He prepared for days of scarcity, because there was a day that Esau went out and Esau could not get a catch. So he had to come home to ask Jacob, and in the process, guess what happened? He lost his birthright. And God said, this is something I gave you sovereignly, and you threw it away because it was not operating by the right principles, and he lost it to, guess what? Jacob. Jacob, who was thinking, he was working. He was a mild man, the Bible says. He was a cultivator. He was a tent man. He was a nurturer. He was a gentle, quiet, contemplative man who calculates a lot. He would rather use his mind first before using his strength. He would rather plan before setting out. If you are that kind of person, you will rule over the others. Nations who are like that, nations that are planners, they ultimately rule over the other nations that don't really plan and think too much. They just put a lot of activity out there. Jacob operated on using the power of his mind, the force of imagination, thinking and planning to accomplish tasks. If you are that kind of person that's always thinking of how to simplify old complex procedures, you are thinking of easier, faster, efficient ways of doing things, you are a man of dreams and visions and innovation, then you are going to rule over the other people. That's what God himself has said. Of course, people called Jacob a mommy's boy, but ultimately they saw that his destination was the one that God loved and God favored, and was the one that ultimately got an ascendancy over Esau. Even from the womb, Esau came out first, but the Bible says that Jacob held his heel and came out second, but holding the heel. What was he saying? He's trying to say, even though you are ahead of me, watch out. I'm going to keep on striving. And he believed in reaching out for more. He unlike Esau, will be confident in the fact that, well, I'm born first and I'm born to rule. I'm born like that. No, please keep this in mind. If you want to be the head and not the tail, above only and not beneath, you need to adopt the principles of Jacob, a cultivator. Right. And verse 23 of chapter 21 says that of Genesis chapter 25, verse 23, it ends it by saying, one people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. Which system is stronger? The system of those that think like Jacob. And the people that think in an old way, in a archaic way, set in their ways, they don't adapt. The older, the stagnant, obsolete, outdated thinking people, they are the ones that will end up serving those that have fresh, vibrant, creative ideas like Jacob. Innovation will dominate tradition any day. Now, Esau always move around, running around, and trying to use a lot of energy and strength. But the Bible says that the race is not to the swift, the battle is not to the strong. Activity is not the same as productivity. Activity is not the same as productivity. You need to review all the activities in your life. Are you being productive? If you look at the end of their lives, Esau ended up marrying wrongly, causing a lot of problems in the family. He moved to the ungodly, but Jacob kept on moving on with the plan of God. Jacob became Israel. Israel produced Jesus Christ and produced Christianity that has led to the advancement of the human race. So, I want to ask you, are you an Esau person or a Jacob person? If you want to secure your future, you must be you got it right, Jacob person. So what do you think about what I've shared today? Can the future be secured? Have you learned anything from what I've shared? I want you to comment. If you have not yet subscribed, what are you waiting for? Please subscribe and encourage your friends. Once they have a Gmail account, or encourage them to open a Gmail account, then they can subscribe on my channel on YouTube. Make sure that you also ring the bell so that you can be notified next time when I share with you. Until the next time, listen, let's grow together to 100. Until the next time, peace.